So then, good morning, everybody. My name is Florian Maurer, and I'm working for the Vorarlberg University of Applied Sciences. Vorarlberg is one of the 9 federal states in Austria, and I have the honor today to moderate this session. And as first, I would like to introduce Professor Michael van Diggelen and welcome him for his presentation. Michael, I would like to give the floor to you.
Thank you so much for inviting me and providing me the time to have a chat and talk about design-based education. Before I start, I would like to ask a procedural question. How much time do I have precisely?
We have 2 hours for this session, so now it's up to you. So yeah, we have up to 2 hours, so up to you to decide how do you divide this time.
More than sufficient time. Thank you so much. Okay, so then I'm not so used to Zoom, so I'll try to find out how I can share my presentation. So now I need to put it in the presentation mode. Slideshow from beginning. I think this works, right?
It works. Yes, perfect. We can see everything.
Thank you so much. Okay. Now I'll close the screen because then I'm able to see the presentation slides itself a bit better. So, as introduced, my name is Michiel van Diggelen. I work at NHL Stenden, University of Applied Sciences, which is a University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands, in the north of the Netherlands. And my presentation or story will be about design-based education. And I will focus on the what, why, and how of it. So just before I start, perhaps a bit of a background about who I am. Well, I'm the professor and I chair a research group on design-based education. We have about 12 researchers, and we have a university-wide assignment. And our assignment is to come up with, let's say, the theoretical underpinnings, the empirical undergrounding, and also the hints and suggestions on how to further develop design-based education at our university, and all from a research perspective. So I came up with the following outline for today. First of all, the welcome and objectives. Well, the welcome that has been done by Florian and also by Katrina, and I will explicate my objectives of this presentation. Then I have a question formulation part because I think I have a more targeted presentation when I know a bit more about your questions and needs. Then I will go into the content, namely DBA, what, why, and how. And in the end, I will return to the questions that you asked, if provided that I haven't answered them already. And since we have quite a nice group of people, I think interaction is possible. So please feel free to interrupt and ask questions, because the more interactive, the more I'm able to convey my knowledge as well. So yeah, that brings me to my objectives of today. I'm asked to inform you about what design-based education actually entails. So if I abbreviate DBA, if I use the abbreviation DBA, I actually refer to design-based education. And also I would like to answer your questions. And if time permits, and I think we do have time to do so, then I would like to dive deeper into what it asks from a teacher perspective. So yeah, my first question is, and that's perhaps a bit difficult when you have no knowledge, but only associations with the word design-based education. But my question to you would be, what would you like to have answered in this workshop? Which question? And just give it a few moments to think about this question, and then please type your answers in the chat. Same question. Oh. And we should answer that question, right? I just wait a couple of seconds to see whether different questions pop up. But if that's not the case, I'll return to my story. What are the artifacts of design-based education? That's a nice word, artifact. That's indeed a design term. Yeah. It's a difficult question to answer, though. During my teacher training, I've always learned not to talk when people think. But online, I always find it a bit difficult. That's perhaps because I find it difficult to deal with the sound of silence. I imagine that, yes, how does cooperation affect innovation in your daily work? That's a good question. All right. Well, if you have any questions, just post them in the chat. Then I'll return to my story. It can help in my classes. Well, I hope so. Now, I try to convince you that it will, or that it might be the case. I'll return to my story by now, yeah. Okay, so now that's it. So design-based education, the history, the future, and why. I would like to take a step back and to start in 2018, because then at the time in the north of the Netherlands, a merger took place between NHL Hogeschool, Noordelijke Hogeschool Leeuwarden, and Stenden. So a new organization was born, namely NHL Stenden, my current employer. And in the time they decided to come up with a new educational model, namely a model that builded on the past and the traditions of two organizations, but also added something new, something the employees and colleagues could identify with. And that was design-based education actually. And the intent was to position NHL Stenden as a frontrunner in both the theory of educational literature and also in practice. And of course, also to anticipate the future and to provide our students with transition-proof education. And what you will notice in my story is that I won't touch upon the questions of innovation and artifacts immediately, but it's behind it. So what I suggest is that we just build in time to answer these questions. And also it can help in my classes will be touched upon, but also in between the lines. So I will summarize it at the end. Yes, to keep you informed. Okay, so just a sidestep. Good to know is that I'm an educational scholar. So actually everything that is about the future of society and also industry is not my main field domain of expertise, but we all know that we face a digital transformation, that sustainability issues are quite important over here, but also in your place, I assume that that the demographic changes are challenging, less youth, more elderly, the trends of becoming more global while also maintain the importance of the region is important for us. And in the same time, we all see that students and also society is more individualized in a way. So there's a need to build connections between students, but also between colleagues, which is quite, which is seen as quite important in our region, is the strive for broad prosperity. And by broad prosperity, I mean to maintain a reasonable sound of wealth for all people, but not only wealth, also to have a broader perspective on, let's say, what is important. So not only money, economics, but also the social aspects and the green aspects, etc. And we all know that the knowledge and information is widely available. So what does that mean for our education? We could summarize it as the need for a different type of industry. We have the human-machine collaborations, more creativity and customization, but also more human-centered innovation is needed. So just to give you a bit of a background before the decisions to choose for design-based education. I'm heading towards what it actually is, but still I would like to give you a bit more of background. Design-based education is an educational concept which is basically rooted in the tradition of problem-based learning and design-based learning. Problem-based learning is an educational concept which was introduced in medicine in the 1970s and 80s. And in Europe, this problem-based learning was introduced at more the engineering universities, where it was called design-based learning. And then the means of problem solving was replaced by designing. So I would like to show you that design-based education is not a story on its own, but it's actually a member of a tradition of different types of pedagogies, actually. And currently we have, I wouldn't say the same concepts, but similar or comparable concepts like challenge-based learning, etc. So, of course, we do plead that we have an distinctive educational concept with design-based education. I just need to get used to this program because I see myself whole time. So yeah, that's it. Can I close the chat? Does someone know how to do it? Because
there should be a cross in the kind of corner.
Because I can't see my I can't see my final slider anymore.
So, yeah, on the right-hand side, in the top, there is an X.
Okay, thank you. So to give you a bit of an historical glimpse into the introduction of design-based education, I would like to go to where it is actually about. And now my slides do not move anymore. It's weird. Okay, I'll stop sharing and we'll start the presentation again. Just 1 second, I'm sorry. Content only, share. Okay. Now, this is weird.
Yes, we can see it again.
Yeah, but I would like to go to the next slide and it doesn't work.
Okay. Try to
Maybe
click it.
We have no mouse. Just next. Yeah, that does work. Okay. Fortunately. Well, I would like to go to the design-based education. So what is it actually? When I've used this word, where am I referring to? Well, design-based education has different elements in it. What is important to bear in mind is that we see it as a concept. And with a concept, we mean it influences what our students are supposed to learn. It influences how our teachers are supposed to support or challenge students' learning, but it also influences how our organization should organize the learning environments. So in that respect, there's already a first implicit answer to the question about, is it useful for my class or something like that? So which facets am I referring to? Well, design-based education has basically 5 pillars, namely we distinguish design thinking, multidisciplinary collaboration, which is also oftentimes called transdisciplinary or interprofessional learning. We use sustainable education, international and intercultural competencies, but also personal leadership. So I will browse through them one by one to give you a better impression of what it entails. So design thinking, I'm not sure whether you are familiar with design thinking, but design thinking is a way of problem solving that was introduced by IDEO a time ago and is now became wide known. It's an important way of solving problems, which is actually builds up on the user, so user knowledge, rapid prototyping, dealing with ambiguity, and future orientedness. And it's oftentimes said that design thinking fosters innovation, but also creativity. So the reason we use it is that it is supposed to enhance innovative solutions for problems. And of course, it's a way to deal with the wickedness of problems. So design thinking, we use multidisciplinary collaboration. That means that students from all programs at our university are confronted with design solutions that require student work and work in teams. And these teams are oftentimes multidisciplinary, although I need to admit that it's sometimes hard to really organize the multidisciplinary aspects. So what we see in practice is that in particular in the third year of, for example, bachelor programs, the multidisciplinary collaborations start to take place because it actually, how do you say it? The implementation and realization of these projects requires some, free space to actually bring students from different programs together. And that's oftentimes hard to organize. So multidisciplinary collaboration, well, I'm sure you're familiar with the topic. Personal leadership, that actually means something like our students learn to make choices, to formulate goals, to realize these goals. And these goals are either personal with respect to becoming the professional, but also how do I plan my work, etc. So it's comparable to words like self-directed learning, self-regulated learning, etc. And it also means that we offer our students freedom of choice. And the idea is actually that autonomy also gives our students ownership and motivation to put more effort into their learning processes. And then we have the facet or pillar sustainable education. Well, I think sustainable education is important in two respects. On the one hand, because it targets challenges or design challenges with respect to sustainable issues, so like circular plastics or whatsoever. But also it means like that our learning should be sustainable in a way. So yeah, that's the part sustainable education. And finally, we have the pillar international and intercultural. We actually make the plea that all our students should encounter, how do you call it, international or cultural experiences. So that oftentimes means that our students should go abroad or that they are collaborating in student projects with students from abroad visiting us. So we see that as enriching for our students' future career. Taking one step further from the facets of design-based education to actually how do we approach and solve problems? Well, that's what is called the model of design-based education. It's actually inspired by design thinking and a model to solve problems. So the idea is that it's not a stepwise projects from A to B, always in the same order, but our students are supposed to learn to approach these, to solve issues by using this model and deciding upon what is the convenient step at this point. So, for example, we start with research the question from practice. So, what is the actual question that not the client but the users that we have? Then we would like to finalize the question on the basis of knowledge or information. And instead of analyzing more and more and more, we would like to go to, okay, come up with ideas to solve the problem. And then after generating ideas, we would like to go from an idea to a concept. So, it should be tangible in a way. That could be seen as an artifact, where I refer to the question of Florian. And that's what we call prototypes. And these prototypes should oftentimes be applied and tested. And of course, this can be done in the long run of a project, but the idea is actually to do it much faster, to have one design sprint a day, for example, to come up with a couple of ideas and a couple of prototypes to test them, and then to develop them further. So the idea is it's way more efficient to do so, and then to get into the details of a prototype during the course of a project. So this is to give you a bit of an insight in our design approach, actually. Then I would like to give you an idea of the learning environments that we use. So we call them ateliers, but there are also universities that use the word labs or studios. Actually, these ateliers are places where research, industry, and education meets, where we jointly work on design challenges provided by the clients or industry, where students work in groups, where research is present to learn from the knowledge available and the expertise available within our institute, but also where the coaches are available. And what you see here is a visible of the Innovation Lab, which is basically an atelier in the educational domain, and which is focusing up on the use of 3D printers, virtual technology, and so on. And they oftentimes collaborate with students from the social domain, but also from students from informatics and so on. So this is just one example. Actually, we have ateliers in all programs of our university. So that means that we have ateliers in the nursing domain. We have also ateliers within the Maritime Institute, for example. So this is another example, which is called the Inclusive Community Lab Friesland. It's actually a party that received a national prize for their innovative and also groundbreaking work. So this is a lab which is facilitated in a community in the municipality of Friesland, and students are there. People from the neighborhood are there because it's a very poor region where many people live there without having jobs and who are lonely, etc. So the students there work on basically assignments to connect people to enrich and make the neighborhood more lively and sustainable. So I think that's also a nice example. And in this occasion, students from entrepreneurial studies, but also from social studies, and students from the educational studies participate in the projects. Finally, an example of the Center of Expertise for Water Technology, where students from NHL Stenden and a green university collaborate. They work on questions like how can we make our the use of our water more sustainable, and so on. So I think just to give you an impression of the the variety of the ateliers we use. And I think the point that I would like to convey to you is that we have ateliers from students from all programs that we offer. So it's a university-wide phenomenon, and the ateliers, we actually use them in each year of each program. So that makes it also an educational concept, because it's during the whole program our students go through, they need to work on design challenges. So why? Yeah, that's a good one. I think the first why lies in that we see, we have implicitly used a vision on what our students and the professionals of the future are supposed to be able to do. And I think we see our students and the professionals of the future as design professionals. So instead of viewing design as a skill just relevant to design professions like industrial design and so on, I think we see it as a generic skill. And that's where we try to train or educate our students for. It's not just a concept which has been chosen because it's popular or whatsoever. I think it's firmly grounded in ideas on learning and instruction. These ideas are basically called social constructivism. So the ideas say basically that learning can be seen as personal, that meaning making is personal, that learning should always be in context, that the educational offering should be as authentic as possible. Well, to put it a bit black and white, but to give you an impression. And if we transfer these ideas to, let's say, why it should work, I think that the idea is that the way we offer our educational content to students should enhance the intrinsic motivation, should be more activating and lead towards more meaningful and deep learning. And the idea is also that it therefore results in better transfer of learning to other places. I explicitly state that it's an assumption because not everything has been researched yet. And yeah, we also make some new steps. So yeah, so this is why basically. And the how, I think it's fair to say that design-based education and introducing design thinking to all students from all professions asks a lot from teachers, because, well, some teachers are really experts in their domain, and basically design thinking is quite a normative approach. What implicitly and secretly happens is that design thinking introduces certain values into the educational programs, like reciprocity of teaching and so on, embracing diversity. And I think that might be a good thing now and then, but it also sometimes clashes with how teachers are used to work. So it asks quite a different thing from teachers. And yeah, that's why we came up with a model to demonstrate which tasks and activities are actually inclined or supposed to take place within design-based education, and the model is visible here. So what you see in this circle is basically 3 axes. In the middle, we came up with the word professional identity to demonstrate that, yeah, each person, each teacher has its own unique skill set and ideas about what education should be, but also what design should be, etc. And in the second, how do you call it, layer, we use the word collective professional identity, and that's intentional, because if you use open approaches like design-based education, it's very important that teachers have quite an explicit shared grounding, because actually the teaching is quite interactive, dialogical, and so on. And the expertise becomes, how do you call it, more relative, so to say. So it's very important that teachers are at least aware of the expertise and beliefs and of their colleagues. And that's what we see, at least. This requires explicit attention. So, and what you see in the third layer is actually the tasks and activities that teachers are supposed to conduct. So, namely, design and co-create. So, co-creation is a work where basically teachers, students, researchers, and partners actually solve problems together, and where the solution should be more than the sum of its parts. And well, in reality, this can be quite difficult to realize, because it's also something new or different from many teachers we have in our department. So that's the first thing, design and co-create. The second thing is research and substantiate. So what we see as important for our teachers is that we make informed decisions about our educational part, and because it's quite open, new situations oftentimes pop up. So therefore, it's the more and more important that our teachers reflect on their own situations and find out for themselves what works for them and the students given certain situations. I also think the third one that relates to the questions that came up before, because in our institute, we have many teachers that have, well, let's say, left academics and became teachers, and teaching is their primary job. And they, of course, have contacts with industry or societal partners, but actually on a personal level. And it's always a bit informal. But now I think networking becomes a more explicit task of the role of the teacher. And in reality, not each teacher is, how do you call it, accustomed to it, even willing to do so. So that's why we made it more explicit. And the same goes for the entrepreneurial part. So if you would like to use concepts like these, it's very important that you have an offering of projects for your students and design challenges, and it requires oftentimes acquisition and so on. So, well, not all teachers are used to this, and it's also fair to say that not all tasks equally fit all teachers. When introducing design-based education, I already referred to that the influence on learning, teaching, but also organizing it. So it's quite quite isn't the word. It asks time to coordinate these kind of things, and more than organizing a class now and then. So that's why we came up with this explicit one as well. And of course, we would like our teachers to observe and assess, share and transfer knowledge, and support and challenge them. So support and challenge refers to the role of facilitator. Share and transfer actually refers to the role of the expert. But it's not always the case that experts lecture. It's of course allowed, but it's not always the case. The funny thing is that when introducing this concept, many teachers thought we are not supposed to teach or instruct anymore. Well, I think that's not the case. The idea is what works for whom, in which moment, and also lecturing can be quite active. But so I'm not sure how much time I used to have to organize my talk, but I think I had the idea to give you a bit of a background on the educational concept, and now I would like to use the time to have a more in-depth conversation, because that's where my knowledge pops up, and which makes it more concrete and tangible for you, I would say. So what I will do now is have a look at the time, stop the slides, and go to the questions again, if that's okay. Because I can imagine that this presentation was a bit generic for you, or perhaps even far from my bed. So I'm quite curious about your ideas after listening to this presentation.
Yes, thank you, Michael, for this presentation. It was very fascinating, and I'm opening the door for the questions. So let's be interactive.
Thank you.
I have one question for sure, but let's see if somebody else has as well. So maybe
it's always a bit difficult to estimate what the specifics and the depth is of a presentation if you do not know the audience. So that's why I kept it a bit generic.
Yeah. No, I think it was very interesting in HAMK. We are also we have benchmarked your model for design-based education, and we are also developing our own.
Yeah.
But I had two questions. First is that I'm very curious about this work-life cooperation, that how you are tackling that, how the teachers are creating this work-life cooperation. You said that it's more time-consuming maybe, or takes effort, but how do you support, or how do you do this? And then my other question is, that was very interesting also, that model that you showed in the last slide.
Yeah.
So I suppose you are kind of trying to create like a shared professional idea of a professional identity. And I'm also very curious that how do you do it? How do you have training for teachers, or how do you do this?
Yeah, so actually you have two questions, and the first one relates to the work-life balance and what it asks from teachers, and the second one is more about the role of the teacher and helping them to become to define themselves in design-based education more, so to say. So may I ask one question in return? What do you mean precisely with work-life?
I mean that I suppose you have your ateliers, but then you have challenges or questions or problems coming from work life, and the students are learning by solving those. So in order to create that connection with those work-life partners, companies, municipalities, NGOs, whatever they are, how do you create those connections so that you get input and you get these problems from them so that the students can solve them? How do you build that cooperation with teachers and those partners? That's my question.
Okay. Well, let me start by giving a generic. That's a good question as well. So first of all, I think the generic principle of building relations between all levels of an organization is very important. So what oftentimes happens is that on a strategic or board level, there is communication and there are agreements with companies. So that's one. And more on the middle management, there's also a strong connection, and with teachers and people from, well, let's say, in the primary process as well. So I think it requires sustainable partnerships, require sustainable grounding. So that's one. Secondly, is that in an ideal world, I think there are, how do you call it? There's an agenda. So where certain topics are explicated, where programs, ateliers, and the partnerships are able to work on. On this agenda, there are predefined stakeholders, and whether this is the case, that differs a bit. But this is actually how it oftentimes works. Then we have account managers, both on an institute's level, who, let's say, come up with partners, see opportunities for collaborations. We also have account managers connected to the individual programs. So not all academies have the luxury of having account managers, but the better ones who have more sustainable partnerships, which is something else as an assignment, they have account managers. So what I oftentimes advise people or academy directors to do is to use these three elements at least. And if we go to, let's say, the quicker timetable, where projects need to be refreshed because students would like to have something new, I think each semester there are. So let's use the Inclusive Community Lab as an example. What they each semester do is they have coordinators who have contact with coordinators of industry partners or societal partners, and they meet 3-4 months before the actual semester starts, and then they say, okay, this is our project. Should it be updated or not? What is the room for fresh or new projects, etc.? And then it's stabilized again, and then they are able to say, to how we call it, to arrange their programs. Say, okay, the colleges that offer does it fit the project description, for example? So actually, that's how it goes. In reality, it's not all that proactive and pre-scheduled, because so the larger the company and the larger the program, the better programs are able to pre-schedule things and work proactively. Because oftentimes, for example, in quite a small program or with a small, how do you call it? MKB is a Dutch word for a small company. Well, time is scarce, people are scarce. So then it's oftentimes fixed programs are just one in and then out again. So there's it's also a bit black and white, or there's a variety in how it is organized. And I think, well, to give you a further impression, that I think we've designed time-based education for approximately 6 years now. And what we see is that the first programs start to really work from partnerships, not by title, but also by doing. So partnership means reciprocity. And that the question, it's not we serve you, we serve you have, we have a challenge that can be solved by you. So it's not about the problem that the company has, it's about the users that have a certain idea by the problem of the company. And that's already a mind shift, because that presupposes that not each company has actual gains the next semester, and that requires time, expectation management, and that's what we learn, and that's actually requires deliberate policy making on these kind of things. And in the more successful programs, that's what you see actually. So, and with respect to the work-life balancing, I think work-life is already present in the challenges itself, in the description. I think work-life is present in that our students are supposed to go to neighborhoods, to go out of the university and to meet people. So that's actually the word user already involves or means get in touch with not only the, let's say, the employer or something, but also the users. So that's already work life. And I think during the whole project, work life is there actually. However, there's also a certain logic, order, or progression in the extent works life is there, because some programs, for example, accountancy, I mean, there's quite a fixed expertise in this domain. So then it's oftentimes also logical to learn this expertise in a predefined manner beforehand, and then the real work-life questions come a bit later in a program. So I think there's also a progression in it. It differs. So the idea is that it differs a bit between domains, actually. Yeah. So is that an answer to your first question?
Yeah, thank you. It was very. It looks like you are considering this like kind of in many levels. That your school is doing a lot of cooperation in many ways with
we do.
with your partners, and building that as part of the kind of
I think
structure.
we do.
Yeah. Very
But it's
interesting.
also a bit vulnerable now and then, because what we also see is that many partnerships depend upon the individual context
Yes.
of teachers.
Mm.
And the idea is also that it should become a bit more sustainable. So it's like technical innovations. Oftentimes we see the main drivers leave or something. So that's also the challenge of this kind of education, that it should be connected to different people, so there's no vulnerability. And that's actually the real challenge, I guess. So that's the first answer to the first question, and your second question referred actually to the model I demonstrated to you, model from Hanneke Asten and myself. Well, I think in general, I already said that with the introduction of design thinking, new values enter the educational domain. Values like reciprocity, diversity, dialogue, etc. So I deliberately use these words because these values, oftentimes they really connect with what is already there, but sometimes they don't. And that actually means that all individual teachers should be aware of these values, but also of their own norms and beliefs, in order to position themselves to it. So to make it more concrete, I am Michiel. I'm not the kind of person who likes to lecture. Actually, I'm more of a dialogue. So, but that doesn't mean that dialogue is always there for me. That's not my position. But we could say that I need to have the tasks and the jobs that address dialogue more. So the other way is also there. Some teachers like to lecture. They are really have satisfied students, etc. Asking them to always coach might be a bit challenging. So the point is that different people have different talents, and I think design-based education requires different things. So if you're able to know what fits you and your students, but also know that from your colleague, you're able to do the jobs that you like, but also are good in. So, and that's the idea of professional identity, actually. So on the one hand, teaching is of course personal and asks different things, but also being a teacher in design-based education asks different things. And the idea is to make it fit to your talents as much as possible. I think that's quite a generic answer to your question. And if we take it one step further on how to help teachers, I think we have a general offering at our institute. We call it My Academy. There we have courses for our teachers where they can, on the one hand, the basics for new teachers, where they learn to become, well, it's like getting your driver's license in a very you become, how do you call it, consciously aware of what you're doing, which is not necessarily the same as being an expert. So being an expert requires experience on the one hand, but also knowing what you're doing. And that's why we have offering for on the one hand. And the more experienced teachers also have offering, for example, senior qualifications, examination, and so on. We have offering for teams who would like to make work of, let's say, well, how they are supposed to assess within design-based education or something. And oftentimes we would like to work a bit question-oriented. So what actually happens is that a lot of activities that My Academy unfolds is addressing the needs of teachers. So we have 3 coordinators in our institute who regularly visit team leaders and ask, what are the needs that you have confronted with, let's say, the new challenges? What do you need? And then they have dedicated offerings. Yeah, that's how it goes.
Very interesting. Yeah, because you also mentioned that this kind of way of teaching might mean changes, in the kind of ways that have been done before or methods that have been done before. So that's interesting that how that support happens in your organization. Yeah, we are working on it a lot in Hamk as well.
That's
as
what I
we
heard.
speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Michiel,
Yeah.
Michiel, we are colleagues, as you know.
Yeah.
And I noticed practicing this design-based education also it needs another type of skills for students. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah. So what oftentimes happens is that students are confronted with real open challenges. So open means we do not precisely predefine what the problem is. We do not precisely predefine what the supposed solution is. And we do not tell them how to get from A to B. So that means uncertainty in three respects. Well, you can imagine that students fresh from secondary school entering programs with, what am I supposed to do? They might be overwhelmed a bit. So in that sense, it requires dealing with uncertainty. That's one. It requires openness to new experiences. It requires the idea of learning from failure. So because the idea is not we analyze on and on until we are quite sure what the problem is. No, it's actually the other way around. We make decisions based upon too little knowledge. We assume that we don't know what the answer is, but we start making our idea more concrete and test it. So that means also going out there, speaking to people, which is also quite a challenge for many students because, well, in reality, some students find it even difficult to make a phone call to an employer. So in that sense, it asks really to get out of your comfort zone, I would say. Sometimes too much, that's something else. And also it asks for not only analyzing information, but also to make it concrete, to visualize it, form-giving aspects. So this is only, you ask from, what does it ask from students in a different way? Well, this is only the design aspect, actually. I think it also asks, like teamwork in general, communication, so many skills. And actually also, so it's not only like educational programs are oftentimes arranged by two ways of logic, namely inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. Inductive means we do something, we generate knowledge out of it, and then I put it a bit black and white. And deduction means my lecture informs me about something and then I apply it. So in this type of education, it doesn't work that way always, because it always works like, so that means that students are basically responsible for integrating what they have learned in different classes. And that also so integration is quite important. I think that also requires different skills, not only from our students, of course, but so yeah, these kind of things. Is that recognizable for you, or?
Yes, and it can be really shocking in some cultures facing this new way of learning. I experienced some classes that there were students who lost their way completely because instead of sitting and listening, they had to do some research on subjects which they expected to hear from me as a teacher. Funny to see that.
Yeah, and of course, I recognize your story, and this also raises the question whether the openness should always be there. Like I say, I think it shouldn't, because well, swimming now and then might be good, but you shouldn't have the feeling that you're drowning, right? So, so I think that's also where we are able to make steps. So applying design thinking is not the same as learning to apply it. And I think there's a difference. And to be honest, there's something that we as an institute are learning and are improving. And so this is only with respect to the design thinking part and cultures. I think the underlying idea is that that cultures differ with respect to the definition of expertise and being hierarchical or not. So design thinking is really reciprocity, and it also puts the expertise of the teachers into question a bit because, well, different problems require different solutions, right? So the question is also, shouldn't we work with predefined questions a bit more, where the teachers are able to convey their expertise more, so we have a bit more certainty that our students also have that firm knowledge base that we are supposed to deliver. So, yeah.
I agree. Thank you.
Welcome.
Michael, I have a question because you stated go beyond, or if I got it right, go beyond deductive and inductive reasoning.
Yes.
What is then the approach? What are you proposing to the students by going beyond inductive and deductive reasoning?
Well, that's a good question, and this question touches upon the fundamentals of design thinking. Actually, I think that design thinking touches on abductive reasoning, which is a different way of reasoning. It goes back to the philosophical roots of Peirce and others, and it basically states that, like I said in a previous conversation, that there's no certainty about what the problem is. There's no certainty about what the supposed solution is. There's no certainty about how we should solve the problem in order to reach that solution. So there's uncertainty with respect to the problem, the solution, and the means. That means that students need to learn to make decisions based upon too little knowledge. And actually, that's what abduction is about, in a way. So, and that's actually, I think it's learning to deal with uncertainty, but also it makes an appeal to more creative approaches to, and the in reality, most literature that we as educational scholars read are not based upon these kind of logic. So it opens new doors to new questions where no knowledge is available within, let's say, the educational sciences. It starts to develop at this point, but 6 years ago it wasn't. So, but the other step is that it means that the knowledge available, and it's also logical because we are transferring design from a design discipline towards other professions. So we are actually using a new way of logic in a way. And this logic has consequences for learning and also teaching and how it is built up in course of a program. And I'm sorry?
I got what you mean with that, but is it not dangerous to have this abductive reasoning? Because it's very surprising some results, and if I got it right, so it's very close to American pragmatism.
Yes.
And what we see from the pragmatism at the current state, especially in politics.
In this way, dangerous, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we introduce the politics and the underlying debate about what knowledge entails or the world should look like within our educational programs based upon our educational philosophy. I think it's only a way of how the logic works, not the means to use the logic in a way. So that's in that sense, it's not emancipatoire, or I think it's just, I use this because it opens the question: to what extent is design thinking always the design approach for a student? So regarding to the year they're in, regarding to the profession they're in, but also regarding to the, let's say, the outdoor, the life work outdoor. I think it's fair to say that design thinking is really relevant for all students from all programs, but the moment and the extent to which it is the case differs. So to make it concrete to you, accountancy, the example I used, well, they have so many external regulations they need to adhere to that it puts quite some pressure on a program, which has the consequence that many teachers feel the pressure to have certainty that the students are learning the right thing. And the word certainty here presupposes that we can't work and can't use undefined challenges, undefined solutions, and undefined means from the start of a program till the end of a program. So that already implies that abduction isn't the right mechanism for these kind of projects in year one the whole time, which is not the same as it's not relevant. So I think we should look carefully about what to ask from whom in which situation. And I haven't even used the word innovation urgency or something, because we have some conservative professions. The same example, accountancy, I'm quite sure they do not use design thinking in its pure form the whole time, which doesn't mean that they are not designing. That's something else, but that they are designing on the logic that fits their profession. And by doing this, they are already innovating their students, but also their profession. That's what we find. But if you ask me, do they use design thinking in its pure form? I would say no. But if you ask me, are they designing things? I would say yes. So the whole point is that design thinking that's transferred from IDEO and stuff, and it has a certain popular creation vibe. But if you go to the design disciplines, design thinking is used in quite a different way. It's literally the thinking of a designer. And that also means fitting the problem, fitting the context, fitting the person. So this is really the depth. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't work in our institute. That's a whole different issue. But I think it relates to the questions that you were asking about innovation. Because the question is, what is innovation? What is required to stimulate innovation? What is an innovative product? And what are the prevalent problems that professions are confronted with? So if you have many routine jobs, I think it doesn't make sense to use design thinking the whole time, because design thinking doesn't help to develop routine skills. Design thinking helps to develop the more complex skills like communication, collaboration, being creative, etc. So that would also be my advice to new programs who start using design-based education. Design thinking is good, but do not assume there should always be a literal translation. The same as coaching. Coaching can also be more directive towards less directive, depending upon what is needed. But this is also my point of view. But yeah, so well, something more as an answer to your question only, Florian. But
I know it is. How can I say it correctly? So it's walking between the borders. So this abductive reasoning. So I know it very well, and I'm teaching my students with deductive, inductive, and abductive reasoning, and
Yeah.
always say avoid abductive reasoning, because the evidence is missing sometimes.
Okay. Well, I'm not fully agreeing with that one, but I think it's also depends upon the context wherein you use abduction and also the objective for what. So my question to you would be then, Florian, which courses are you lecturing and in which context are you using abduction?
Yeah, I'm using it for science, the philosophy of sciences. And here I'm going into evidence-based mechanisms, and in inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning, it's very easy are not very easy, but it's evidence that you can provide the evidence in inductive reasoning. The more data you have, the closer you get to the probability of truth. And in the deductive reasoning, you have the truth per se, so or at least a relative truth. And in abductive reasoning, you have the origin, the cause, and you have the effect, but the missing link between the cause and the effect is missing, and that is a kind of a probability that this cause has this effect. It's a kind of an estimation from my point
Yes,
of view.
I agree with you, and that's also the content. But I think the context wherein we use abductive reasoning is for a different purpose. It's not to make decisions based upon a certain. It's from a user perspective. So that's a different perspective, and that's why I said the appreciation of expertise differs. So it's a different objective. So that's one. And the second thing is that I think it depends again on the purposes that you have with learning processes. So if the purpose is to help your students become more creative and more imaginative or something, I think it's valid. But also that's the frame and let's say the logic behind it that should be explicated. Of course, that's a responsibility that we have. And it's good to make students aware of the different kind of logics. And well, in my view, it's not the one or the other. It's just different. And yeah, of course, how do you call it? Solving math disciplines is something else. I don't think we should use abduction there in a certain way if we know the logic is already available and the knowledge. That's to put it a black and white. But yeah, so I agree with your point, but I'm not sure it raises the questions. And referring to your remark about the evidence isn't there, about the lack of evidence or whatever you said precisely.
It's kind of viability, I would say.
I'm sorry?
It's a kind of a viability, I would say, than the solution. So sometimes it's transferable and sometimes it's not transferable.
Yeah, precisely.
But I'm completely okay with your explanation. So it is, I know it. So it's discipline dependent. So you can't go to creative people and say now you need to do some deductive work because they will get lost from my point of view.
Yeah, precisely. And but perhaps that's interesting to mention, and it puts our discussion, or let's say dialogue, a bit further, because I think there is evidence that design and design thinking is useful to foster creativity and innovative behavior from a student perspective. But that's how it should be used, purposeful in this respect. It should not be used to transfer all knowledge available within a certain profession. I think that's a whole different thing. And so, again, it should be fit for purpose. And then it's really important that we agree upon the purposes, let's say.
Yeah.
That's very interesting to listen to your dialogue. I was just thinking that this actually raises the question that where in the curriculum the innovation skills and knowledge should be placed.
Yeah.
And that's a question that here also we have been thinking about a lot. And then it depends on that discipline that you are learning, the profession that you are learning as well, that what kind of emphasis should be put on learning innovation skills and at what point of your studies and in which course or in which context you should learn those. So that's the kind of wider question about it that you made me think about again. We have, for example, had these conversations also with nursing students.
Yeah, precisely.
Which is also another profession where you need certain skills, and as you said, even generic skills that you have to have different kinds of problem-solving skills depending on what you are doing. Yeah. If you are in a urgent situation with a patient, maybe you need different kind of problem-solving skills than if you are in a team meeting trying to figure out something in the multidisciplinary team. So very interesting to think about that.
Yes.
Where do the innovation skills, should they be put in the curriculum of the different disciplines?
Precisely. Yeah, I recognize the question, and in that sense, we learn by experience also, because I think we can also only come up with what is logical for us. It's not, there are no given predefined answers based upon research or something. But I recognize also. I was thinking while you were talking about, and I also came up with the example nursing, because that's of course a bit protocolized now and then, routine exams, but I do think that they all need a different problem-solving skills as well. Because we could see it as a social service they are offering or something. So it also depends upon the words you're using and how you're framing it. And I fully agree.
There is one question from Maru in the chat as well about the adult students, and then that brought to my mind also that question that you see difference between young students who are just coming to the university to learn something, and then students who maybe are changing career or are coming later on to study. Do you see any differences in terms of how this design-based education then works?
Yeah, we do see differences, although it's not underpinned with research yet, because that's the research that we conducted was just focused on the bachelor full-time programs, which are oftentimes students between 18 and 24 years old. But what we do know is anecdotal information, and I think there's a difference in the transition from, let's say, work to school or school to school. So that's one. That's like my colleague was already referring to the openness students from other countries are sometimes confronted with. I also think that is applicable to our students from the Netherlands. And so that's one, because the openness can be overwhelming, to put it in a way, and somehow I think that students who are already experienced having a job for a time, it goes quicker, faster, so they are better able to deal with uncertainty and to make decisions in a way. So that's I think a difference. The second difference is that education is like water, it goes. So that means that the teachers we have in our let's say educational programs offering to the professionals, so to say, I think it's already more application oriented, while not labeling it as design-based education. So I think if we wouldn't record this session, so I put my answer between brackets, I think that it's fair to say that the part-time programs we offer, which are for the adult students oftentimes, that's more application oriented, and problem solving is more into it already. So I think it naturally fits design-based education actually better, even better, I would say. And that's what my generic answer would be. I think the challenge lies mainly in connecting them better, because we are in a phase that we need to become more efficient and effective in our programs, and that oftentimes mean that we combine classes for, let's say, the adult students 24 older and the younger students, although 18 years are of course also adult, but and then we see the differences in experience that of course pop up, and the differences of having different knowledge in the heads, like the more practical knowledge, the more, let's say, so there's a different development that you see from professional identity to professional identity, where the complexity should be. So I think the difference lies more there in the challenge. And my recommendation would also be to have students fresh from senior school to take a different role, because they're also not conditioned with the knowledge and the experience from the profession. So I think we should use them more to keep fresh eyes or something. So I think we could also learn more from each other, and it's precisely this kind of, how do you call it, vertical feedback or something, which is not used very often. And I think there lay many opportunities to improve. So that would be my recommendation, actually. Thank you.
Good. Then are there some other questions? I'm checking the chat. My question is, what do you recommend for adult students?
Well, I tried to answer this question, but perhaps I need to make it a bit more clear. But actually, my recommendation was to programs implementing design-based education to use the different types of students in classes more. I think there, on the one hand, there lays an opportunity to learn from, let's say, the younger students for our adult students, and the other way around, because, yeah, perhaps I wasn't clear.
It's an older question, so it's coming from 15 minutes before 11.
Oh.
So we have 11:30. So, but I think it's solved, this question.
Okay.
Okay. If there are no other questions, then I would say a big thank you, Michael. It was very fascinating to get your speech and to get in dialogue and discussion with you.
Thank you.
And then I would hand over to Mila.
Thank you. Thank you again from my part as well. I think that we got interesting input again from this session for the teachers who are interested in innovation pedagogy, a new model, maybe questions to think about the professional identity. I think this is a very important question when we think about innovation pedagogies and ourselves as teachers, that how do we see what is our kind of idea of teaching, and our kind of own idea of what is a teacher and what is a teacher's role. And I think this changing into innovation pedagogies actually means maybe a lot of thinking through that as well, that how does it change our position maybe as teachers. So at least this is something, a takeaway that I take with myself. And I don't know if maybe everybody can in the chat or somewhere also tell us what you're taking from this session. But if you are done, Michael and Florian and Ewald as well, we want to thank you from InnoBoost a lot. And if there are no more questions in the audience, we can, of course, finalize this session and just say thank you to everybody for participating, and please do go ahead and look at the materials online, and remember to do your self-declaration form. I remind you about that again so that you get your certificate. I'm putting again in the chat as well the website address where you can find the links from, and this is also where this session's recording will be placed later on, so please do share with your colleagues as well. And with this, I think we want to wish everybody a wonderful week, and thank you for joining us today.